You're watching JCT TV. This is Bible Study for the 21st Century. A few weeks ago, Rod Hembree's wife Janice was on with Rod and brought great value to our program. They have a daughter whose name is Corie. Her name is Corie Hembree. She's a marvelous young woman. A lot of you, if you watch Quick Study, now called Bible Discovery, have seen her on the program over the years. She's terrific in history and archaeology and the backgrounder to the Bible. She's going to be my guest. You're going to find her delightful. And then I'll get back to our study.
Jim Cantelon Today is a program dedicated to the teaching of the good news of Jesus Christ. This all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. JCT also brings to you encouraging testimonies and stories from Christian leaders all over the globe. If this program has added value to your life, would you please consider becoming a partner? To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
I mentioned off the top how excited I am to finally have Corie on the show with me. She's not the least by any stretch, nor is she the last, but she's the last interview of the Hembree clan, although her name is not Hembree.
It is not.
It is Babechko.
It is Babechko, yes.
How long have you been married, Corie?
I've been married for almost 5 years. 5 years and 2 months.
And you have one son.
I do, Emerson.
Emerson.
Yes, he's 1 year and 2 months old, and he is a wild child.
I've heard he's quite precocious.
Yes, he never stops.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to sleep. He loves life. He's so happy. He loves people. He loves his grandpa. So he's the best thing.
Now, when you say he doesn't want to sleep, I'm sure you say that with some regret.
Oh yes, I would prefer it if he liked to sleep, but I've come to embrace it as part of his personality.
Well, if it's any comfort to you, our firstborn, Todd, did not sleep a full night for 2.5 years. So, I mean, eventually it comes.
So there's a good club.
Yeah. And then when they're a teenager, they want to sleep for 14 hours.
Yes, I've heard this, yes.
You've been involved with television and television ministry since you were 9?
Yes. Yeah, I started on a children's program that my dad started to produce when I was 9 years old. Yeah, and I had grown up seeing it. I remember, my dad was, as far back as I can remember, anyways, he was involved in Christian television. So I grew up around it, and so when he offered me the opportunity, I jumped at it.
Any nerves?
Not really.
No.
I had grown up watching him, and I was a little bit of a studio rat. I was always there. I was always around it, and I was excited to try it out, and I loved it right away.
When did you start being a regular player, if you will, with the Quick Study program, which is now called Bible Discovery? When did that begin?
So I've been full-time every day on the program for 8 years, so since 2010. And before that, 2 or 3 years, I was on weekly. So.
And for the sake of our viewers who are just getting to know your ministry, what is your role in the program?
I bring research segments and teaching on biblical history and archaeology and the cultures of the Bible time periods. So really bringing to life the context of these narratives that we read in the Bible. Because sometimes it's difficult for us in our culture to really get the full impact of something that God is teaching in the scriptures if we're unaware of the original setting.
Yeah.
So having that setting really enriches, I think, our understanding.
And to prepare for these programs and these teaching segments, you got to be working hard behind the scenes.
Reading all the time, researching all the time, writing all the time. I love it. It's great.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do.
I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about the importance of context. I mean, one of the guiding principles of my life as a a Bible teacher and pastor and writer is context, context, context.
Yes.
Not just the context of the words, but the context of the culture, the history, who wrote it, to whom was he or she writing, what was the purpose for the writing.
Yeah.
I mean, these are questions that you've got to know for sure if you're going to teach it.
Yeah.
But hopefully what you want to accomplish is to see your viewers learning that skill themselves.
Yes, definitely, and I think especially in our culture, because it seems our culture really loves the soundbite. We really love to just read things really quickly and find supporting arguments for what we already believe. And as Christians and then as Bible students, we can't do that. We have to be responsible in our research. And I'm so passionate about this. And when you know the context of the word, you can't do that anymore. When you add that extra level of depth into it, it becomes really exciting. Then it becomes more of a mystery, more of a puzzle. Well, what was God trying to say through this? And really, I love seeing people begin to grasp that and begin to get the taste for that, and because it changes you, it changes your life.
Something that continually fascinates me is the interplay and the relationship between Israel and some of the nations around Israel.
Oh, yes.
Most of whom were hostile.
Yes.
Some of whom were kind of distant cousins.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And when you look at the, let's just kind of look back right now to the time of Jesus' life and ministry. Most of it was in the Galilee.
Yes.
But then he came down to Jerusalem, as you know, and it was while he was there that he was eventually crucified and died and rose again. It was a Roman-dominated culture at the time. Tell our viewers a little bit about what it was Jesus was facing there historically and culturally.
Well, he was born into this really interesting time period where the Jewish people who were living in what was then the Roman province of Judea, they had some autonomy, they had some responsibility and some authority over themselves to self-govern, but it wasn't a real self-governance, and so because of this, there was a lot of different. I think that everything was tied together. Today we like to separate things. We like to separate religion from politics, from our society, but you can't do that when you look at the time period of Jesus. You see all these different factions rising up, religious factions, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and them being a part of the Sanhedrin, and them kind of fighting for religious, not even really authority, but preeminence with the people, because that in and of itself was authority. And then you see the sons of Herod the Great, trying to piece together and keep some sort of authority. They would claim native authority, and even though their nationality was highly questioned during the days of Jesus. And so Jesus is walking into a religiously charged, politically charged scenario, and it's also, there's an undercurrent, a very ever-present feeling of when should we revolt? When is the Messiah coming? When are we going to cast off these bonds of the Romans? And people had tried, just before Jesus, and they would try just after Jesus as well. So Jesus is walking into a situation where he is the Messiah, but he has to be so careful about what kind of Messiah he claims to be. And I think that's why you see Jesus always being very careful to qualify what the Messiah is.
In many cases he said, stop it. Don't even talk about this. I'm not interested in you talking about this.
Yeah.
Because I think in some ways, even the disciples were tending to religious nationalism.
Oh, yes.
And they thought that Jesus was the quick fix. I mean, he was going to establish a throne, and then they were going to be the cabinet. Okay? And remember James and John?
Can we be your right hand, Lord?
Right. And they don't have the courage to ask themselves. They get their mother to ask.
They send their mom.
I want to be the right. They probably had an argument of who'd be right and who'd be left.
Yeah. Let mom decide.
Let mom decide. But Jesus really was walking a fine line there.
Yeah, he really was. He really, really was. Even, as you say, even his own students, his own disciples weren't really sure.
His own brother, James, didn't really believe in it until a personal appearance Jesus made to him after his resurrection.
Well, and I think that's what's so interesting about Jesus as well, is that he was a man. He was human. So though all of these miracles were happening, you can see then James going, he's just my brother. He's not even my full brother. I know his mom. Like, we come from the same stuff.
Well, you remember back, a year or so earlier, the whole family showed up in Capernaum to take him away and put him in care. I mean, they figured he was out of his mind.
Yeah.
His family.
Yeah.
I assume that would include his mother. I don't know, but
and that's why it's so amazing that after the resurrection appearance of Jesus Christ, that James became a pillar in the church.
Yeah.
It's it's such a huge testimony to the fact that he saw something. James saw something that he believed to be real, because what else could explain this dramatic transformation from complete skeptic to foundational pillar of the Christian church?
Yeah. In fact, in Acts 15, when there's a big controversy about whether or not the gospel should go to the Gentiles, there's, Peter's there and Paul and Barnabas and, all these people, and they're having this big discussion. You can be sure there's some pretty strong words being thrown around the room. Finally, James calms everybody down, and basically, because he was the head of the church. Often people think it was Peter, but it's James.
Yeah.
Fellas, I'm paraphrasing. What were we before we became Jews? They're Mesopotamians.
Yeah.
It was only the call of God that gave them their special, chosen people identity. So he said, look, if we were Gentiles once too, why should we deny Gentiles access to our Savior? We got 2 minutes, Corie. Have you thought about writing at all?
I have. There's not a lot of time for me right now, but I mean, there's different phases in your life, right?
Yeah, there are definitely phases.
Yeah.
I wasn't writing much when my kids were little. And I wasn't their mother either. But no, you got a lot on your plate. How do you feel about this new direction with Bible discovery?
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for it. We have a problem in the Christian church today of biblical illiteracy.
Yeah.
And so with this name change, I really believe that God is spreading a bigger net. It's easier to grasp the concept of what we are. And I'm just praying that we're able to help more people read through the Bible and really understand what it is that they're reading, because it really does change your life.
Absolutely. Well, Corie, thanks for coming our way.
Thank you so much for having
I
me.
enjoy watching on the show. I think you and I need to do stuff together in the future.
That would be great.
Maybe I could make you a regular guest on my program once in a while.
I would love that.
Thanks again. I'll be back with more right after this break, friends.
JCT TV is the official voice of WOW, working for orphans and widows. Jim Cantelon is the founder of WOW and has been ministering to orphans and widows in distress for 18 years. WOW's focus is home-based care for the dying. The horizon is vast, with thousands of the least of these in Africa and India. WOW depends on your generous support. To connect with us, you can call us at 1-800-969-9551, or you can visit us online at wowmission.com.
I kind of left you hanging last week as Jesus got into what we call a third woe, where he talked about oath giving and oath taking. And he was fed up with it. It was characteristic of the scribes and Pharisees' approach to life. it wasn't enough just to say, yeah, I'll do it. You say, by the hair on my head. In my case, that would be a problem. But the hair on my head, or by on my mother's grave, or by my father's white hair, or, I will do what I will do. Now, again, it was a part of contractual agreements. But if you really wanted to make your agreement powerful, you would say, by this or by that in the temple, by God's throne in heaven, by the name of God himself. Okay. Jesus had no time for oaths. He really didn't. And you see this in Matthew 23, and I read that whole section to you last week, just to pick it up in verse 21 again for a reminder. He who swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. The temple means nothing, Jesus is saying, it's just stone. But if you're swearing by the temple as it is indwelt by the Heavenly Father, okay, that's something you really have to take seriously. He who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. In other words, okay, don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. If you're going to use God's name in your oath, then you better be sure that you follow through, because otherwise you give him a bad name. But he says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, verse 23. You pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done, without leaving the others undone. Blind guides, you who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Now, if you were there in the crowd listening to this, you said, whoa, he's being pretty harsh on these guys. Yes, he was. He's saying to the Pharisees, let your yes be yes, your no, no. He got into that in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5. He says, don't you see, the temple houses the altar engages the sacrifice, heaven is the location of the throne, and all lead ultimately to God. If you're going to swear, really, you're swearing by God. You're taking an oath in his name. And you do not break an oath in God's name. You do not take his name in vain. That's the point of one of the commandments. Ultimately, you're accountable to God for the covenants you make, the agreements you make. They're not only legal, but they are registered in heaven. He says, you better be careful before you take an oath. Just be careful. Okay? Let's move on. Verses 23 and 24. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay the tithe of mint and anise and cumin, have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides, you who strain out a gnat, swallow a camel, pardon me, not a camel, a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Jesus warns against buffering the higher by massaging the lower. What do I mean by that? Tithes of herbs, or herbs, as my wife says, as substitutes for justice, mercy, and faith, empty and meaningless. Oh, I tithe. I give 10% of my income. Well, good for you. That's what you're supposed to do. Should heaven be impressed with this? What Jesus is saying is, heaven is impressed with justice and mercy and faith. Justice is a big word. The word for justice in Old Testament prophecy in the Hebrew is a word that's often translated righteousness. In the Hebrew, the noun would be zadkah. In modern Hebrew, if I say to a man, you're right, I say atah zodek. To a woman, I say at zodeket. A holy man's called a zadik. ZDK or ZDK, depending which country you're in, is the initial root of many applications. But essentially it means righteousness. But sometimes it's translated justice. There's another word that's translated justice, mishpat. But it was interesting, just as the old year was winding down, you see a lot of, man of the year, book of the year, song of the year, all these things of the year, movie of the year. Well, guess what the Merriam-Webster Dictionary word of the year was for 2018? Justice. Justice. The most searched word in the English language in 2018 was justice. Justice is a critical word, You cannot get away from it when you're going through the Old Testament especially. In fact, this was in the plan, but I think let me just look at something with you for a minute. In Isaiah 42, this is called one of the servant passages of Isaiah, servant referring to Israel's coming Messiah. And the Lord is speaking with regard to this coming Messiah and says this, "Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break. A smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged until he establishes justice on the earth." Righteousness and justice are the foundation of thy throne, O God, the psalmist says. Again and again and again and again in the Bible, righteousness, justice, righteousness, justice. Well, here Jesus is saying, tithes don't impress the Lord, justice always impresses him. And justice means reaching out to your neighbor, those who are in need. Now, I've been the last few months telling you about how JCT is now the official voice of WOW, working for orphans and widows. Google wowmission.com. Take a look at it. For 18 years now, Kathy and I and a huge team of volunteers in Africa have been ministering to orphans and widows in their distress, as James says in 127 of James. And in trying to meet their needs in a humble way, medical needs, physical needs, hunger needs, we also try to meet their spiritual needs. And before they die, see them come to faith. This is justice, okay? You want to be like Jesus, as sometimes you will sing in your churches? Try justice. Seek to right the wrongs of your world. Seek to care for the needs of your neighbor. Justice is what impresses heaven. That is not at the exclusion of righteousness, by no means. You can't have one without the other. You got to be in right relationship with God, for sure. But you also need to be in right relationship with your neighbor. Righteousness, fulfillment of the vertical relationship. Justice, fulfillment of the horizontal relationship. Jesus says justice is impressive. So is mercy. In Hebrew, it's hesed, or I should say chesed. You got to kind of get guttural with some of the H words in the Hebrew language. I sometimes tell people facetiously the ch sound is naturally an Israeli sound because you live on the edge of the desert there and there's always dust in the air. Nevertheless, hesed is a beautiful word. It refers to the everlasting, unending, loving kindness and mercy of God. Even in the face of abject, adulterous, and idolatrous behavior, God demonstrates his hesed to his people. It's a beautiful word, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, mercy. You show mercy, especially in situations where the one to whom you're showing it doesn't deserve it. Thereby, it's an act of grace. That doesn't mean you're a codependent with bad behavior, but it does mean that when someone has blown it and blown it royally, and the only thing that will restore them to relationship is your forgiveness and your mercy and your grace, be sure you give it. Because when you do, it registers with the Lord. That's what Jesus is telling us here. All the outward show of things, the broadened phylacteries, the fringes on the prayer garments, being called rabbi and then father, and getting the best seats in the banquet in the synagogues and the best seats in the banquets, and all of this Pharisee stuff. It's just purely human, carnal stuff. Man looks on the outward appearance. He sees that stuff. But God looks on the heart, and it's often on the level of the heart that justice and mercy is best served. You can reach out to the needy, and they need never know it was you who reached out to them, if you want to remain anonymous. But as long as you're sure that what you have given, what you have done, serves the purpose of relieving their misery, their poverty, their sorrow, their brokenness, whatever it is, justice will be served. Beautiful. And actually, I think the more anonymous, the better. I love it when I hear stories of people who have given 20 impoverished families a full turkey dinner for Christmas time, or have supplied their school fees for an entire year, or whatever. Done it quietly behind the scenes and no one knows. This is justice seeking, this is mercy, this is chesed, loving kindness. It's a beautiful thing.
Friends, as you know, Jim Cantelon has been offering Cantelon's Casual Commentary as a Bible study supplement to his ongoing exposition of St. Matthew's Gospel on JCT-TV. He's excited to offer Volume 4, which completes the Matthew study. The Transfiguration, Triumphal Entry, Crucifixion, and Resurrection of Jesus Christ are all covered in this volume. Like the first 3 volumes, it's concise, captivating, and casual. To order your copy, you can call, write, or go online. Write to Jim Cantelon today, Post Office Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R3Y7, or call us at 519-415-8341. You can also order online at jimcantelontoday.com. Request Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 4, and for a gift in any amount, it will be sent to you. When you place your order, also consider becoming a monthly partner. Remember, your gifts help us build this ministry.
JCT is the official voice of Working for Orphans and Widows. WOW, for short. A ministry to orphans and widows in their distress that my wife Kathy and I founded 18 years ago, that's been working all of those years in sub-Saharan Africa, and now we're expanding to East Africa, West Africa, and also into India over the course of 2019, God willing. With your support, we can make it happen and deal with the most distressed of people. Pure religion undefiled, the kind of religion God endorses, James 1:27 says, is to visit orphans and widows in their distress, to keep yourself unspotted from the world, righteousness and justice. When you call in your donation or log on or mail it in, ask for Cantelon's Casual Commentary. It's in 4 tranches. This is the entire commentary now that I've written on the book of Matthew. It is in small print. It's a small size, so it fits in your purse, your wallet, well, your back pocket at least. And it's really good stuff. I think you'll like it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Contact us. Jim Cantelon today. P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R3Y7. If you're sending a check, make it payable to Jim Cantelon today. Or visit us online at jimcantelontoday.com and click Support.